We are edging closer to the end of the Premier League season. One weekend of action remains, with European spots still up for grabs, with a weekend dominated by VAR once again, an FA Cup final which was dominated by the aforementioned. We're here to discuss all of the weekend's action. Now it's the Premier League roundup, but this week there's not going to be too much Premier League chat because it's been second story to those things that have happened this weekend. And Josh joins me. I hope you are all well. Josh, how are you, mate?
Not too bad, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad at all. And just in time. There we go. Seems like we've got a halo around him. Sean, how are you, mate?
Good, mate. Bit of sunshine.
Bit of sunshine, absolutely. A weird weekend of football. We start on Friday night, and that is where we will go to Villa Park to talk about your two lots. Aston Villa 2, Spurs 0. Josh, I'll start with you. This game meant significantly more to you than it did for the away side, and all 3 points secured at Villa Park.
Yeah, I actually thought we started off quite poorly first half. I thought we'd get an early goal like we did in the cup against them, and then we ended up blowing them away there. But it didn't quite happen like that. Spurs, they sort of come and park the bus really. I think they had less than 30% possession first half, and we actually made Tottenham hard to beat, which has been quite unlikely this season with the way Ange plays. But it certainly made us look quite hard to beat. I thought first half we didn't create an awful lot. We dominated the ball, but struggled to break Spurs down. And then once we got the scrappy one, the second half from a set piece, I thought we were a lot better then, and Spurs sort of threw in the towel, and Villa sort of just saw the game out. Then just didn't really go for any more. Just tried to keep the ball and see it out, because the most important thing for us was we need to win these last two games just to stand any chance of getting in the Champions League. So it weren't too much of like a nothing game. I wouldn't say it was a thriller either. I just thought Spurs had nothing to play for. They sort of just come and park the bus. Villa struggled to break them down. Once we did, we just controlled the game, and that was about it really. It still had it stand out of our hands now going into the last game in terms of qualifying for the Champions League, unless Bournemouth beat Man City on Tuesday. If not, we're going to need Chelsea to get beat, or one of Chelsea, Newcastle, or City to get beat. But just to be in this situation with still in the hunt for the Champions League with games to go, I think is a great achievement considering the players we've lost this season and the injuries we've had. So yeah, it's certainly been a good season, I'd say anyway. But managed to get the job done the other night.
Yeah, sure. I mean, for you, it was purely let's not get anyone injured and get out of it ahead of Wednesday, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think Sarr limped off or something. I think he's hurt his back, so he was probably due to start on Wednesday. I don't know what the plan is now, whether it's anything serious or not. It was what it was really. It was obviously the game that was moved. It was moved last week before Tottenham got into the final. The Premier League moved it. I know some Villa fans didn't like that because they wouldn't move their game when they had the Champions League tie or something like that. But I think the Premier League should have always helped our sides more when it comes to European games. However, this time, I know some Villa fans were going down like, oh, it's the Big Six favouritism. It wasn't that at all, though. It was, don't really think they had a choice but to move this game because it was two Premier League clubs possibly competing in the final.
Yeah.
So even though I do think they should help our clubs more, this was quite extreme and it would almost show favouritism. Do you know what I mean? One club and the other. I think we were due to play today. So Friday, United having 2 extra days rest. The Premier League sort of owe it to their member clubs for it to be fair. But yeah, it's what it is. We've said it quite a few times over the last couple of months. Josh saying about the teams going for Champions League and it's like Man City and Chelsea thinking, blimey now, it doesn't take a lot to get in the Champions League spots nowadays, does it really? But also, I can remember a few years back, it was always a big buzz about getting that fourth spot, some real top decent size going for it. And now it's the top 5, and I just don't feel that sort of buzz for this season. I don't know why. I know I'm not one of the clubs chasing it, but I haven't really read much about the teams going for the 4th and 5th. It's sort of been a little bit more muted this year than past seasons.
Yeah, and you'd think, especially because it's literally the only thing left to talk about in the Premier League, it would have been a little bit more intensified in that sense. But yeah, we mean with the 5 teams now, there's been teams dropped in and out of it. Forest team out of that race, like pretty congested there with a lot of teams, and I think partly because we don't know whether seventh or eighth might get European football, and with Palace winning the FA Cup, it's all very complicated there and congested. You had the likes of Brighton, Brentford, Bournemouth, and Fulham yesterday cheering on Manchester City, hoping that Conference League spot would remain eighth, and that didn't happen. And it's all just been a bit of a mess, to be honest. We could end up with 9 teams and nearly half the league in European football next season, which is not going to do the Sunday games any good. It's going to be rather bleak and flat. So you could take that as a positive or a negative, who knows. But let's see who's joining us in the chat. Josh's granddad will be moving on to Everton very shortly, and the symbolic afternoon that has provided on Merseyside. Yeah, it was fantastic. The atmosphere and noise was unbelievable. GFC, thank you very much indeed for joining us as well. Right, let's move on, shall we? To Goodison Park, Everton 2, Southampton 0. Now that is the second story to, of course, the final ever game at Goodison Park. And I mean, even from the pictures from about 10 o'clock this morning of the street on the way up to Goodison Park in just a sea of blue, and it reminded me a lot of the last game at the Boleyn, where practically all day in the lead up to our night game at home to Man United, Green Street was full and there was thousands there, and it was very reminiscent of that. And I'm going to miss Goodison Park. I think I've been there 3 or 4 times. One of the proper old school grounds, which unfortunately are getting even more few and far between. But of course, they got the win, which they would have liked today. But most importantly, Josh, a brilliant send-off to a brilliant ground.
Yeah, absolutely. And I said to you before we come on, I don't think too many people cared about the football today. Obviously, wanted to get the win, but the main thing was just enjoying the send-off at Goodison. They did a closing ceremony for about it lasted over an hour after the game, as you said, 9 o'clock this morning. The County Road, the road outside there, Goodison was just full, blue flares, pretty much a sea of blue in the ground and outside the ground. Yeah, it was just a special day. Obviously, they are keeping the ground now for the women's team, but I presume it's going to have to be a few changes. Don't have to knock on certain stands down or anything, because I don't think they're going to fill the 40,000 seater stadium. So, yeah.
Sure about that, because to be fair, I saw that come out that they're going to keep it for the women's team, and I saw a lot of people praising it, but that sort of issue arose with West Ham when we moved, and because we were going to be the second last game, and there was going to be like a women's game for the last ever game, and we went, hang on, no, let's have the men's team there for the last game, and that's what materialised. And I mean, I guess then you could argue there's some fans say, yeah, but if they're knocked down, it's not going to be a block of flats like the Boleyn is now. But you feel it just sort of takes away a little bit from today, that's not going to be the final ever game there. It's going to carry on into next season. I think there's good things and bad things to come about that. I'm not sure about it, Josh, to be honest.
Yeah, no, neither am I. My granddad on too much for it, because it's just a bit like, I just thinking about 5 or 10 years, they're probably just going to knock it down anyway. Do you know what I mean? They're probably just trying to make a few more money for the next 5 or 10 years, and then just to knock it down anyway. So is it really worth just keeping it an extra 5 to 10 years just for the women to play in it? And then knocking it down anyway. You may as well sort of just say your goodbyes now with all this, today being the last game at Goodison. I think you may as well just do it all now instead of about just doing it in 5 or 10 years, which is what probably going to happen, because it's the ground's falling down. That's the whole reason why they're moving. It's like it can't last forever. That's the whole reason why they're moving in the first place. You know what I mean? Because the ground's ancient. They have to move on at some point. So obviously they're not going to be able to keep it forever. So I just think in about 5 to 10 years' time, probably just going to demolish it anyway. So I didn't too much see the point in that. But yeah, either way, still to give a special send off today. And the game, it was a bit of a nothing game really. It played a bit like pace, like a testimonial game, and got the early goal through and got another one, and then second half it was sort of just I'd say just the pace of it was a bit like a testimonial. Seamus Coleman leading them out one last time as captain of Goodison. Nice touch as well. Barely played this season, but to give him one last game, lead him out of Goodison, even if he did have to go off injured 15 minutes in. That was a nice touch. So yeah, the main thing was just giving it a good send off today, Goodison, and they've had a good season. Everton, I know a few people were saying they'd be struggling in a relegation fight at the start of the season. Moyes has come in and done a great job. I think they're guaranteed to finish above United and Spurs now. Imagine saying now at the start of the season that Everton would be above Spurs, Man U and West Ham. You'd have probably thought they'd come top 6. It's been a bizarre season, but I think a good one by Everton, considering the last 3 seasons they finished 16th, 15th and 17th. Just a steady mid-table season is probably what they needed, and they've got that. So, next new owners now, they'll probably spend a bit in the summer going into the new stadium and see what happens next season.
But I think they said today when Moyes came in, they were a point off the relegation zone. They're now closer to the Champions League places than they are the relegation zone. So our good old friend Moyes has worked his magic there. Whether it will carry on and prolong into next season, we will have to wait and see. We're just returning to the point about the stadium, Sean. I mean, from what I can remember, the last night at your place was quite a special moment. We had a very special night to cap off. Mic drop, that was it, and the place went, right? I just feel, and as Josh said, the sort of legacy of Goodison might be tarnished a little bit in 5 years' time, when they're getting 5,000, 10,000 crowds there for the women's games, and then it just eventually gets knocked down because the away end is tired. I've been there this year, and there is still wooden seats and like the wooden floor, and it's got character, but the place is crumbling, and they've got to move, or they had to spend money on it, and I just feel like it's a bit of a bizarre thing to do just to try and prolong the inevitable, really.
There's a few things to consider. First of all, most, if not all, of these Premier League ladies teams usually play it like a local non-league ground, don't they? Yeah. And they sort of drag them in for a bit of a novelty game at the big stadium now and again. That's how it is. I don't know where they play. So it's worth looking into if there's a story there, because I know a lot of these ladies teams struggle for the pitches. Sounds bizarre, but sometimes someone like in North London, Barnet, for example, might get fed up of having the ladies on their pitch. That's how it works. So whether they're struggling up there for somewhere to play, I don't know. Also, I know Goodison is falling down a little bit, but let's be honest, the primary reason why they're moving is to generate more money at the new stadium. Because these old stadiums like Anfield, like Old Trafford, unless you spend a bomb on them, and in my opinion, tart them up in a bad way, because I don't think Anfield's exactly an attractive stadium anymore, you've got to move on. You said about 5,000 to 10,000. That's another thing to look into. I'll be surprised if Everton ladies get over 5,000 for home games. I don't follow the game that closely, but I know they're not a team that you see in like cup finals, for example, or in the Ladies Champions League. So I'm assuming they're not one of the more successful sides. So I would imagine it's possibly either they're struggling for a pitch. I know the owners are quite wealthy at the moment, so I don't know if they're doing it as a little bit of a novelty. Do you know what I mean as well? Like, they can play at Goodison. We don't need to pull it down, blah, blah, blah. And they think they're doing a good turn for the fans, but a lot of fans might view it the opposite way. And as for some of the stands, some are in better nick than others, it would not surprise me if they probably only open 2 stands for the games as well. Yeah. So that might be a little bit strange, because even though you only see it on the news in the ladies' game, let's be honest, when Old Trafford or the Emirates is nearly full, okay? The other 90% of the games when they're playing at a Barnet or they're playing on Salford's pitch, and there's about 2,000 watching. Do you know what I mean? We don't really see much of that, do we? No. So there's probably a backstory here. Like, maybe they can't get a pitch. It's probably a lot to do with the new owners think, oh, everyone's sad about Goodison going, let's keep it. And then that's the way you're talking, the way Josh is talking. He knows people there. That idea might backfire a little bit. So I'm probably, with all that in mind, I can see them playing in a stadium with 2 stands open, and this sort of little novelty attempt probably ending within 2 years, and it's pulled down anyway. So it's a bit, they can't backtrack now, obviously, but I think they probably might regret it in the long term.
Yeah, absolutely, and look, whether it stays up for another 5 years or however long, but they love that today. They love that moment to cling on to, and I'm sure they'd have preferred a little bit more of a game with something a little bit more on it, because it was played as like a testimonial today. I mean, would they have loved to have Liverpool there on the final day? Maybe not, but maybe something a little bit more competitive to to bring down the curtain. But I'm sure, nevertheless, a special day as well. GFC, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Josh's granddad says the facilities are fantastic. I've been to one of the test events. There have been mixed opinions on the old Goodison. I personally would have liked to see it go. Yeah, I thought my season ticket says 1973. Well, yeah, so there we go. The Hill Dickinson Stadium, the new home of Everton.
Is it a finance company or a lawyer firm or something like that? I don't know.
I'm not sure, but I've heard they're getting 10 million a year from it. So obviously it's all for just sponsors, and that's the only reason why. I don't think the fans are too much bothered if it's like, if they're getting that much money. I think it was always going to be called named after a sponsor. I think they said that as soon as they announced it was going to be opening. A sponsor was always going to take over, but the Hill Dickinson maybe a bit underwhelming. But if it's
I did see a thing on an AI thing, like Harry Hill and David Dickinson like stood outside with the thing, which made me chuckle. But yeah, look, it is what it is, and I'm sure they're getting a fair old few quid in for that. Let's move on, shall we? Let's go to the London Stadium. West Ham 1, Nottingham Forest 2. One more game to go, then we're done. Thank the Lord for that. A bizarre game, a really bizarre game, which nearly overran into the 4:30 game. We finished about 4:25. This did in the 107th minute of added time. It was a really bizarre end to the game. The ref just decided to make it completely about him. There was a few scuffles along the way towards the end, and it was reignited after a dreadful first half. Areola passed the ball out to a Forest player on the edge of our box to make it 1-0. He just cannot play it out from the back, and once again you find a keeper playing a stupid ball out. Just kick the ball up, for God's sake. And then a needless free kick given away, and it's turned home after a 7-minute VAR check to try and decide whether there was an offside involved in the second goal. Bowen got us back into the game with about 10 minutes to go, and we knew there was lots of added time coming due to the prolonged VAR check earlier, and they put up 11 minutes time, and it seeped into 17 minutes of added time in the end. We couldn't find that equaliser, but a bit of spirit and a bit of heart. About 20 yellow cards were dished out in the last half hour. The ref decided to storm around with the ball and just try and make it all about him, and it was utterly bizarre, to be honest. And it finally drew to its conclusion, and Forest got that win that they needed, and we got a little bit of a send-off for Cresswell and Soufal, who started. No Fabianski starting, which surprised me. Hopefully he will be involved next week for his send-off. But pretty much summarises our season. Not good. A little bit of hope towards the end, and a defeat in our final home game of the season. Any word on this game? Did either of you watch this?
I didn't watch it. I've seen the team lineups from the bench. He just seems making some bizarre sort of team selections a little bit for me. I don't know if you had a few knocks on the bench, but
that was an unchanged team from a team that beat Man United last week. So I think he went.
Oh, was it? Okay. That's up to him. He's obviously tinkered it quite a bit. As for the keeper, I've not been the biggest fan of him, but I think he's prone to too many errors. I think you might need to look at a new one in that area in the summer, especially with Fabianski going as well. I know he can make a good stop, but I think we probably need better than him. I think there's quite a few clubs looking for keepers. But I think with the team selection, there's been a few bizarre ones. It just tells me that Potter is sort of thinking of next season a bit more. Yeah. I know some of your fans have gone a bit knee-jerk and wondering whether he's the answer or not, but I think he knows himself that he's not in any trouble, so we can play around with it a little bit. But keep picking the likes of Ward-Prowse in midfield and that, and was it Rodriguez played again today? Yeah. Do you know what I mean? And Souček, I don't think many West Ham fans would tell you that's the future of your midfield. So the fact that he's running with that 2 games, I know you beat United, but we spoke last week. What do you really take from that United win? Is it enough to go and change, or do you want to try something new to improve it? I mean, you put it this way. I put a tweet out earlier on about Jarrod Bowen. As a fan base, I think you're very lucky he's 28 and got a long contract left, because if he was a bit younger, I think West Ham would probably be accepting a big bid on him, personally. And I think your owners probably would.
Yeah.
The fact that he's at that age where no one's probably going to bid 100 million for him, that's probably what you'd want at least, probably.
Yeah.
The fact he's at that age, I don't think a club would do it. But I think if he was a couple of years younger, I think you'd be in uproar a little bit this summer.
Yeah, and it's going to once again be a big rebuild with at least 4 players leaving, and I would bet good money on probably double that leaving by the end of August. And again, I look at that team today and I point out the players that are going to leave in Paqueta and Kudus and Rodriguez, just to name a couple, and others, of course, which have been confirmed in Soufal and Creswell as well. It's going to be interesting next season, and I am hoping for the level of quality in the teams coming up next year to be just as bad as this year. Otherwise, there may be some trouble down the line for the Hammers, but that's next season's problem and not to be worried about now. Let's go to the Emirates, shall we? Arsenal 1, Newcastle 0. Confirmation of Arsenal's Champions League status for next season. There was a slight chance they'd have missed out, which would have been really funny. I had a feeling Newcastle would tell them over today not to be, and Arsenal get all 3 points. Josh?
Yeah, I thought Newcastle were quite unlucky actually. David Raya had a very good game. First half, made a couple of really crucial saves. I think Newcastle, they had a few injuries, didn't they? I know Isak didn't play, not sure what happened there. But Callum Wilson started up front too. I'm not even sure he scored this season. I think his legs have gone. He must be around 33, 34 now, where he's always had injury problems, and I think his best days are finally numbered. Because I don't ever remember him scoring this season. He went great today. So I don't think that helped having Isak out. Harvey Barnes has been playing quite well recently on the left, but then now he's put Gordon back in, which means Barnes has ended up playing number 10, where I don't think he's as great. He played there against Chelsea, also don't think he looked as good there. But yeah, I still thought Newcastle were quite unlucky, to fair to say. Ray had a decent game. Even second half, they gave it quite a good go. Willock was unlucky at the end, put one over the bar. Yeah, I think Newcastle have Everton at home next week, and Everton were absolutely nothing to play for. Last game of Goodison done now. I think they probably should win that. If that's all they need to get in the Champions League, which I think it is, it's in their hands. They're the team who's third at the minute. Then I'll probably back them to do that next week. So it's not too much of a bad result for them. As for Arsenal, I think they were always going to get Champions League, because even if they didn't win today, pretty sure they had Southampton next week away. So if they didn't win that one, then they wouldn't deserve to get Champions League, I suppose. But that's it sealed now. It's been a bizarre season. It was like they were in a title race up until February, and they ended up nearly falling off the top 4. So bizarre season for them, as well as Champions League semi-final, of course, as well. So I think it's a big year for Arsenal and Arteta next season. I think if they don't win the league next season, then I think there could be serious questions start to be asked about Arteta. If it's that 3 seasons in a row now where he comes second, I think it might be. And after this Champions League semi-final, after all the hype around the first leg against PSG, just for him to pull out that horrendous tifo after the Arteta inspirational speech and all that. So that was quite an underwhelming end as well. But yeah, I think it's a big season for them next season. I think if they have another year like this next season, then I think there could be questions asked about Arteta. Because, that's 5 or 6 seasons without a trophy now. I'd say 3 second place finishes in a row. I think there'll start to be questions asked next season if nothing changes.
Yeah. Now, to meander onto the FA Cup final, you could say that Arteta has won the exactly same amount of trophies as Oliver Glasner. Let's have a word on the FA Cup final and on domestic cups as a whole, just briefly. Now, I may hold this view more strongly than you, Sean, but I was quite glad this season to see 2, and I thought it was quite refreshing to see 2 teams outside of the Big 6 win the domestic cups, Newcastle Carabao Cup and Crystal Palace winning the FA Cup. I think it's just been quite refreshing, and I'm glad they won it yesterday. First trophy in their history. Amazing scenes. Replaces the sort of robotic nature of Man City winning everything year in, year out, I quite enjoyed the scenes actually.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you there, mate. I think we've seen a little bit of Palace. I think they've sort of a bit like other teams. They've focused on this cup a little bit in the last month. You can tell, even when we played them the other week, you could tell they were sort of getting their team ready for the final. I think it was good. Didn't watch all of it. I watched it in bits and bobs, but I did actually come inside and watch the last 10 minutes when the cameras on the Palace fans more than anything, and just seeing the nerves, the fear in their face, how close they are to winning. You know, it's like you almost half expect an equaliser to go in the 98th minute. Yeah. So that was good because we don't see enough of that in the game anymore. Do you know what I mean? Like you said about the robotic nature of the same teams winning. These same teams don't even bother going to Wembley for the cup final anymore, the fans. Do you know what I mean? So, and their excuse is, well, we've been 30 times in the last 5 years. So it is refreshing, and it is a timely reminder that some of the beautiful game is left, basically. But again, it's another reminder that I think the game is changing very slightly. I don't know whether it is the excessive amount of games and how both in the summer and extra European games, it is taking its toll on a lot of clubs. Do you know what I mean? Liverpool just about got over the line in the league, but they faltered in the cups. Really, not you were saying the cups they haven't been as good as what they'd hope. So yeah, I am glad they both won, but and Newcastle, I don't think they had Europe this year, did they? So I think that has probably helped what they've achieved. But yeah, I do agree with you that the domestic cups, probably the last 10, 15 years, the shine's gone off them a little bit, especially when the huge, rich money clubs win them. So it has been nice to see. Yeah, you're right.
Absolutely. And just before we go, Josh, I don't know about you, but I'm about to go and dust off my Manchester United shirt for Wednesday. I don't think I have ever really expressed my gratitude to Manchester United, but it starts now as we eagerly anticipate the Europa League final. See, Sean's dog agrees with me as well. He's cheering on the mighty Red Devils on Wednesday ahead of their triumphant Europa League campaign. Josh, who are you supporting?
Predictions?
Go on then. Josh, who are you supporting and what's your score prediction?
I'm supporting Spurs. I can't have Man United at all. And I'm just going to go 2-1 Tottenham, more out of hope after watching them against Villa. But yeah, I would much rather Tottenham win something than Man United, because just quickly, the thing is with Man United, like, they're not even supposed to be in Europe. The only reason they're in this Europa League is because they won the FA Cup last season, they come 8th, and the only reason they could be in the Champions League next season is because they're going to win this, not because of the league finish. So if that's the way to get in the Champions League, I couldn't have that. Obviously, it'd be the same for Tottenham, but I just can't stand Man United, to be honest. So yeah, I'd much prefer Spurs to win it.
Josh, you disgust me. You've gone down my estimations massively in the last 2 minutes. Do you know what? I'm going to be totally honest. I think it could go the opposite way that I want. I've got a really bad feeling, unfortunately, that Man United are going to bottle it. And I think Tottenham are going to win, but I'm not going to predict that. I'm going to maintain my hope, and I'm going to go Spurs 1, Man United 2. But Sean, I'll say this now. I unfortunately think you're going to do it.
Do you? I said 2 weeks ago, about 10 days ago since we got through. I still can't split them in my mind. I've gone with all different directions, and I just can't seem to split. With Josh's thing about Europe and getting into the Champions League and then being the UEFA Cup, again, and I keep banging on about this, it's the nature of the game now. They're only playing by the rules of the competitions. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if there's a slight easier way of getting in a competition and it's in the rules, it's only natural they're going to go for it a little bit, and that's what I think Tottenham and Man United have done. It takes 16 games to win this Europa League now I think, and that's if you've done well in it. So they've gone for it. What I will say is we've managed to keep our back five fit, which is our first choice back five. They're, as far as I know, they're fit and should start. And when that back five play together, I think they average 2.75 points per game, a 75% win ratio since they've been at the club. That is as good as anything in Europe, I'd imagine. So if that back five are fit and on it, we've got a chance of keeping them out a little bit. If I was going to be pushed for a score, I think it'd probably go to extra time. My fear, if it goes that far into the game, is typical Spurs season. We've had 3 big injuries in the last 10 days since the semi-final. Bergval's back playing just about, but he's got a bad ankle. Maddison and Kulusevski are out for the season. And they've both been good for us in Europe. So if it goes to extra time, my fear is the strength and depth of both benches. Like it's not helped by Mason Mount having like a resurgence, for example. Do you know what I mean? He's sort of the last 6 weeks, he's sort of hit a bit of form. So if it goes to extra time, my fear is who we've got to come off the bench. But I sort of hold hope that we might be able to limit them to 1 goal with our back 4 and our goalie, who do play very, very well together. And they've been resting those, especially the 2 centre-backs, they've been resting them for all these league games. And when they played in Europa in between these rests, they've just looked top drawer. They haven't looked rusty, like they've needed the minutes. They've looked the part. Do you know what I mean? We've gone away to some tough places and kept clean sheets in Europe, and they've looked like that defence that has got a great record together. So I think it might go extra time, but you've got to live in hope, haven't you? It's never a final for Tottenham. We have so many finals. I'm just used to it now. Unfortunately, we've lost the last 3.
Well, I don't think there'll be a lot that separate the sides, to be honest. That is reinforced by the league position, how tight they are in that. And yeah, I don't think it's a great promo for the Europa League, having the 2 teams in the final, 16th and 17th. I'm not sure they'll be coming out with that as their headline for the final. 2 English giants probably will be what they aim to headline it as. But I'm sure Bilbao will be descended with thousands upon thousands of British, and hopefully they all have a fantastic time, especially the red half of them as well. But no, we will pick all of that up next week, where either I'm in hiding and Sean's jubilant, or I'll have my Man United shot on loud and proud. As we go to Ipswich next week as well, a nice weekend in that part of the world to see the Mighty Hammers finish what has been an absolutely awful season.
You're not going, are you?
We are, of course, we are.
You are?
Yes.
Why?
It's last game of the season. It's a party, Sean. You should know this stuff. Come on.
It's not. It's one of the worst parts of the country to get to from us. It's not.
It is a long way.
I would not go to that last game if you offered me free helicopter transport and corporate box or anything.
To be fair, luckily we've got family that live about 40 minutes away and just over the Essex border, so we are making a proper bank holiday weekend of it, and hopefully a decent West Ham performance, but I'm not going to moan on that. Right, a few comments before we go. Michael, evening, other people. The season is nearly over, thank God for that. Thank goodness the season comes to a close next Sunday, only 90 more minutes. The dross is nearly over. Those 3 comments epitomise everything about the West Ham fan base at the moment, but there we are. Right, Josh and Sean, thank you very much for joining us for our penultimate Premier League roundup show. I will see you all sometime next week, probably not Sunday because I will be in the glorious Ipswich sunshine, but Sean, I wish you absolutely no luck in the next 5 days.
I expect we'll get a couple of injuries before the final, so you probably get what you want.
And Josh, I still can't believe you've backed Tottenham to win. You've really upset me there.
Yeah, no, there's 2 teams I hate as much as Birmingham, and it's Liverpool and Man United. It's obviously different for you because West Ham, you're going to hate Tottenham, but I can't have Man United, no chance.
There we go. From me, up the Red Devils. From Sean and Josh, up the Spurs. And we'll see you soon right here on West Ham Unofficial. See you next week. Thanks very much and goodbye.
Cheers. Bye-bye.